Good afternoon, everyone. Hello, and thank you for joining us. My name's John Parker. I'm chair of the Stonehouse Community Climate Action Forum. I'm also a town councillor at Stonehouse Town Council, and I'm technical director at the Arboretum Association. And it's my very great pleasure to welcome you all to this online climate fair. The chat is open, so please feel free to introduce yourselves. Let us know where you're watching from and comment throughout the presentations. Before you make your comment though, there's a little option that says select all panelists and attendees. So if you do that, then everyone will be able to see your contribution. If you have any questions for our speakers, then please submit them using the Q&A button. Are you in? Well, and Dagan, hello from Stonehouse. There'll be lots of from Stonehouse today, I reckon. If you've got any questions, then please submit them using the Q&A button, making it clear who you're addressing your question to, and then we'll work through as many as we can at the end. Before we get started, by way of introduction, I just wanted to take this opportunity to give you a very brief history of the Climate Forum and how we arrived at this point. In 2018, I've lost my thing there. In 2018, we at Stonehouse Town Council declared a climate emergency, and a small group of councillors with one local resident formed the Stonehouse Community Climate Action Forum. One of the key aims of the group is to support residents, businesses and the council in working towards Stonehouse becoming a carbon neutral community by 2030, and to explore any other ideas and projects which could have environmental and climate benefits. The group has gone from strength to strength since forming. We now have 17 members with a large majority of non-councillors, which is ideal. We meet up around once a month virtually for the last year, of course, to take forward the various projects going on in the town. There's an awful lot happening, some of which you're going to hear about today, and much of which the forum has been closely involved with. The town council's carbon footprint has been significantly reduced by switching energy suppliers and by exploring other improvements at the town hall and other council sites. We're close to setting up air quality monitoring equipment to create a baseline for improving the air that our community breathes. We seek to influence planning and development to ensure that environmental and climate issues are considered. An EV charging point's been installed at the town hall. A cycle parking audit's been undertaken to see how we can improve life for cyclists and encourage more people to get on their bikes. We've led on a sustainable transport survey, reviewed our grass cutting regimes to encourage biodiversity. We've planted and established trees. The list goes on. There's loads and loads of stuff. And you can find out more about what's been happening by checking out the Stonehouse Town Council website. We also made a commitment to hold community events where anyone who's interested could come together to share ideas and experiences. The first of these was a tree planting day at Old Ends Lane in October 2019. And then in February 2020, we held a climate fair in the community centre. Each event was really successful. There were probably about 100 people at each one. However, for reasons I'm sure you'll understand, we've not been able to do anything quite like that recently. So we've moved online, which brings us neatly bang up to date with this very webinar that you've all joined today. We've got a great lineup of speakers for you, presenting a really interesting range of topics. Teresa Watt will be talking about the exciting plans to reopen Stroud Water Station. Mike Davis will be giving us some tips about what homeowners can do to help address the climate crisis. Ginny Young will be telling us about the Eco Churches project. I'll explain what the Stonehouse Community Arboretum is all about. And Kate James Hodges will present the work of the Stroud Youth Council Environmental Group. But to kick off our event, I'm very pleased to invite our very first speaker of the afternoon, Simon Pickering. Simon, it's over to you.
Okay, thank you, John. I'm going to try and share my screen now. So we need to move that. So my name is Simon Pickering. I'm chair of the Environment Committee. I can't seem to get at the little doodah to do full screen at the minute. Come on. Move over. Anyway, so I've been an ecologist for over 40 years. So I've worked all over the world. So I've actually seen the world change. And to me, I've seen the world change. You don't see it change from day to day, but the natural environment is changing from year to year. So to me, the climate change is not an existential threat. It is something that's happening here and now. And it's happening all around us. And just to remind you that Stroud District Council has been involved in climate change action for a very long time, from back in the 1990s. And even by 2015, it was carbon neutral in terms of its own emissions, offsetting them with insulating properties across the district. So it is actually doing a huge amount of of work there. But it was in, oh, come on, why will that change? Okay. Wonders of this. But in 2018, we did declare a climate change emergency. And the important thing about this slide is that it was voted through in front of a packed public gallery. It was the first time in 20 odd years of being a district councillor I've actually seen that many people in the council chamber. In fact, it overflowed into the restaurant downstairs. People actually supporting the council. Normally you get that many people turning up at the district council when the council is doing something that a large number of people don't want us to do. And I think one of the things to remember is that avoiding dangerous climate change is impossible because of the amount of carbon dioxide that's been emitted over the last 150 years. It's already here. So the question is, how can we avoid catastrophic climate change? And I suppose the next big question to ask is keeping global temperatures within 1.5 degrees C rise possible? And the answer is, it is perfectly possible, even with existing technology. Keeping fossil fuels in the ground, stop destroying forests, cut energy use, power the world with smart renewable energy systems, restore ecosystems and carbon capture. But the most important word on that slide is and. When it comes to tackling climate change, there is no either or. It is and. It is a multiple of solutions. There is not a silver budget when it comes to tackling climate change. So what is the council doing? I wish I could get this to do full screen. Oh, come on. Why won't that do that? So in terms of what the council's doing, the two things the council needs to do is, one is adaptation. Is the council prepared for the changes in the climate that will happen that from greenhouse gases already emitted? What contribution will the council make to reduction emissions? It's small part, very small part, to stop catastrophic climate change. And just to remind everybody that the changes likely to happen as a result of climate change are we are going to get higher summer temperatures, excess heat, which affects food supplies, transport, infrastructure, buildings, council houses, supply chains, more fires. And there will be more frequent and intense storms, which I think today is just a regular storm, but we've all seen it, and we've all seen the flooding in Stonehouse over Christmas. I think the important thing is that when Stroud District Council declared its climate change emergency, the first implementation report, I spelled implementation wrong there, never mind. And the key words there are that it's not essential at the early stage to know exactly how high the mountain actually is, but we need to start climbing now, climbing quickly, in the knowledge when we think every opportunity is being explored and implemented, the summit is still likely to be out of sight. I think that's important to actually start doing things, but at the same time, do the right things. And it is very much the Greta Thunberg philosophy that needs to be done here, is don't do everything completely randomly, but the key is to start building that foundation. It's cathedral building. We don't know what the roof's going to be made of or even what colour it's going to be, but we've got to get the foundations in place in the right to start with. So the District Council started by including climate change action in its corporate strategy, audit policy, purchasing policy, dry stuff, but actually building that base, which is important. We appointed a carbon neutral officer plus an assistant, and we're about to appoint 2 more retrofit officers, so should the budget go through on Thursday. We've already committed to replacing the heating system in the main council offices, a grade 1 listed building with water source heat pumps. Partnership funding, I can't list all the schemes, but in total, we've either committed to or spent something like £800,000 over the last 2 years, and will do over the next 2 years. Community service vehicles, EV or hybrid, new core policies in Stroud District Council local plan, and funding transition Stroud groups. Lots of other stuff. The District Council has had a long record since 2014 and beginning to look at adaptation. Adaptation to increasing rainfall is absolutely vital, given that the Stroud, the 5 valleys, 2 of them are classified as rapid response valleys, and we won't stop the massive floods, but what we will do is stop the floods that appear to be coming virtually every year. And we continue doing that. The project's been going since 2014. We've just heard we got funding for at least another 6 years. While the council has been doing all this work, and it's been doing all sorts of other work, including looking at its council housing stock, it's had a long record of dealing with its council housing stock, but we need to do more. We're developing this strategy and master plan, which has been out for consultation. And just getting back to the numbers, where next do we need to focus our effort? In terms of total carbon emissions, we know, because we've been monitoring how the carbon emissions from the council from 1997, just over 2,000 tonnes per annum. Based on energy, it's 750,000 tonnes, but the total for the district is about 1.3 million tonnes per annum. It's about 11 tonnes per person. That excludes the offshore emissions. That's the stuff resulting from the stuff that we buy from overseas. That's basically all the coal-fired power stations in India that British banks invest in to make stuff that we then buy. What does that break down to in terms of where the focus should be? So this just focuses on where the emissions are. So the biggest single form of carbon emissions in the district is cars. On-road transport, mainly private cars, followed by heavy goods transport and buses, but it is cars mainly. The next is housing, and most of that is private households, but there are obviously rented households, and there's just 5,000 houses which belong to the district council. The next is public buildings and industry, and then emissions from land and agriculture. So how, as a council, given that we've got control from the last slide there of just 1.6% of the emissions, how much can we influence? And that is now the big question. Where can the council go? And that's what very much the strategy, if you read it, it sets out what we can do. Very simply, I haven't put a train on here, Teresa, I'm sorry about that, but it would be about the same as a bus. Anybody can switch from a large car to a small car and dramatically cut their carbon emissions, save themselves money on insurance, road tax, parking space, and all sorts of things. And if you want to show off having a big car, you can buy a really smart small car. You can buy an electric car, public transport, cycle, or even e-cycle. E-cycle is probably, at the moment, one of the most environmentally friendly ways of traveling, even depending on where you actually charge your bike up from. But the next big issue, obviously, is housing. How does the council, we've done great things in the past on retrofitting some of our houses, putting PV panels and air source heat pumps, but the rest of the housing stock, and this is something that I know Matt is on the call, that Matty and I are talking about, and it's the next big challenge for the council. And we're working very hard to come up with solutions to this, both to cut the emissions, but obviously to some of the poorer people of the district, to actually make sure that they're not suffering fuel poverty. Private householders, not every private household is as big as this, but private households are a major source of carbon emissions. I won't go into too much detail because I've noticed Mike is going to talk about that, but investing in your home, if you've got spare capital, is a far better return than any ISA. You actually get a return from it between 7 and 12% if you do the right insulation methods. And you can cut your bills, get a return, make your home more comfortable. Do that before you put PV and battery, but obviously you can switch to green energy. So going back to what the council's strategy sets out it's going to do, it's the 3 E's: to be an exemplar in what we do, put our own house in order and be a pathfinder, be an enabler, work as a partner, identify support, joint funding, working with people, be an encourager. That's one of the reasons why I'm here, encouraging people to take action, and build community governments. There needs to be a broad partnership which will be developed next year to bring everyone on board. Just very briefly, carbon literacy is often the key. And if people take away one message, or perhaps a second message, and I have no financial links to Mike Berners-Lee here, but How Bad Are Bananas is a really good starter book to actually understand the impact of everyday life on carbon emissions. We need to do what Weight Watchers did to calories without the guilt for carbon emissions. We need to start thinking of being carbon savvy, improving the quality of life whilst combating climate change. There's a really good carbon footprint online calculator there at Carbon Savvy. And there is a local, if you want something to motivate you, My Eco Pledge, put together by Jill Taverner, a local Stonehouse person, and that can actually help motivate you and do things. And remember that it's something you need to think about quite a lot of time. Talk about what you're doing so it becomes the norm. Imagine a better future. Imagine the change of direction every day at work, at play, golf club, pub, head, when we're allowed, of course, on the allotment. And there's lots of information. There's a really good Radio 5 live podcast there by Liz Bonham. And just remember that if everyone does a little, we can only achieve a little. And we don't need hope. We need courage, not hope, in the face of climate change. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Simon. What a great way to kick things off. Lots of people interested in all that in the chat, and a bit of questions too. So if you've got any questions, please continue to pop them in, and please do say hello in the chat. But we're going to move right on now. We'll do all the questions at the end. And next up, I'd like to hand over to Teresa. Teresa, you're on.
Thank you. Welcome to everybody, and it's nice to see the chat and nice to see so many people here. My name's Teresa Watt. I'm a town councillor with Stonehouse and have been involved in the campaign to reopen Stonehouse Bristol Road or Stroud Water Station, whichever you wish to call it. It doesn't really matter what the name is. What matters is that it's open. So if I can share my screen, which I hope I will manage to do. Wonderful. So in fact, actually, I'm going to go to the second slide as opposed to the first slide, just to make sure that people understand where it is. So if you can see my cursor. So the current station is on Burdett Road in Stonehouse, which is on the direct line to London or Gloucester and Cheltenham up that way. So Stonehouse residents, we're ever so lucky that we can get a train to London, and we can get on the one of the new wonderful, beautiful trains going through. So Stroud obviously is this direction. But what we're missing, and what the whole of the 55,000 people who live in Stroud Water, the Stroud Water Canal is all the way along here, is a direct route to Bristol, which is our regional centre. So, but we have a train line that goes through from Birmingham, from Edinburgh, Birmingham, Cheltenham, Gloucester, down to Bristol. And there is something called the Old Midland Line, Old Stonehouse Bristol Road, Stroud Water Station, whatever you want to call it. There's a space there that's been defined in the Stroud local plan for 20 years, possibly 30 years, to be reopened, to give Stroud people and Stonehouse people an access to their regional centre of Bristol. Now, the regional centre, obviously we can get to Cheltenham and Gloucester on this line. We have got buses that go to Cheltenham and Gloucester. There is no bus to Bristol from Stonehouse or Stroud. So there's no ability to get to Bristol if you wanted to go to a hospital appointment or education college, university, work, even to go to the theatre. You can't do it unless you have a car. And that is ludicrous for 55,000 people who live in Stroud. The only way that you could do it if you live in Stonehouse or Stroud is to go up to Gloucester or Cheltenham and then come back through, or you go all the way to Swindon and then come back along the bottom line. It's adding an hour and a half to a journey, which could be a simple 35, 40 minutes if we could reopen this Bristol Road, Stroud Water, Midland Road Station, whatever you wish to call it. So in Gloucestershire, we're a shire that has one of the lowest rail use in the country. do you know, now that I haven't put the figures up, which is really silly of me, it's something like is it between 2 and 5% actually use rail for commuting or for other purposes. And one of the reasons that we are so low, and most shire counties are 14% or more, is that we don't actually have access to it. So yes, you can get from Stroud or Stonehouse to Gloucester, but there's no other way of getting in there. And it's the same across the whole of Gloucestershire, that actually there's not many stations that you can actually get on the train to go anywhere. So as a county, we have an incredibly low use of trains. So we have a lack of direct link to Bristol. So yeah, we can't go to college in Bristol. You know, if you're a 16, 17-year-old and you want to go to Filton College, which is the sister college of Stroud College, you can't get there. There's an over-reliance on the M5 for people commuting out of Stroud down to Bristol, but also from people coming from Bristol to Stroud. And Stonehouse itself has a huge industrial area where there's an awful lot of in-commuting on a daily basis, and a lot of traffic and congestion caused by people commuting in from Bristol who could get on a train. And of course, why we're talking about this today, the whole point of today, is that we have a climate emergency. We absolutely must get people out of cars onto other forms of transport, as is one of the slides that Simon showed. We can't carry on with the huge amount of carbon being emitted from the use of cars, and whether that's onto e-bikes or bikes. I saw the question, interesting one. You know, we do need to have this modal shift. We do need to get people out of cars onto other forms of transport, but they can't do that if there is no place for them to get on a train. We have an awful lot of housing coming up around the Bristol Road Station, Stroudwater Station. We've got the Wester Stonehouse going there. That's 1,300 houses there. We've got another 700 houses coming up here potentially. So there's a lot of new housing and industrial areas, and new industrial areas coming up there. The Stroudwater Station, Bristol Road Station, has got very good access links. It has got a road, it's got 419, it's got buses that come through Stonehouse and actually go through to the new development west of Stonehouse. We've got plenty of footpaths, as you can see. We've got the national routes, National Cycle Route 45, and of course there is the other station, the Burdett Road Station. So where this station would be is there. There is already an existing station there, which is why it's called Bristol Road or Midland Road. There is a station building there even, which you saw in that original picture. You know, actually no, I don't think that is it. There is a building, but it wouldn't. The station wouldn't be in that building. It would be a new build. And the developer who owns the site and has got planning permission to put housing on an awful lot of the site, is desperate for us to have a station on that site as well. He really is very keen for that to happen. So what do we want to do? Well, we want the planners, Stroud District Council, are absolutely on board with reopening this station. What we haven't managed to convince yet is Gloucestershire County Council, who are the Transport Authority, to make this their priority project. But we do need to do this work to change our use of transport in the Stroud area, but across Gloucestershire and across the globe. So one of the things that you can do, you know, attending and listening to this meeting, is to lobby your district councillors, who are absolutely all in favour of it and have just passed a resolution to reopen it, but petition your county councillors who are not as much on board, and potentially they want to build another station closer into Gloucester. So they haven't made up their mind where they want to have a station. You know, from us on the working group, we're happy to have 2, we're happy to have 3, we're happy to have 5, who knows, as many as possible if we can actually get people off the roads. But it could be that there's only space in the network for 1 or 2, which is what Network Rail have suggested. So if you could sign the Gloucestershire e-petition to reopen the station, that would be great, and put pressure on county councillors. There's just a very quick slide to say that, the percentage of change of people living in the area close to the station has gone up hugely, more than Gloucestershire as a whole, or Stroud district as a whole. And of course, just the absolute need for us, for the 55,000 in Stroud and Stonehouse, the Stanleys, Eastington. If we get new housing potentially in Whitminster, this would be the location for that. There's an awful lot of people who could get on this route. Network Rail are talking about enhanced services between Bristol and Birmingham, but we have got a growing population along this M5 corridor, and we need to do this now. So it would give people a choice. It would help decarbonisation. It would help in social mobility. So young people could get to college in Bristol, for example, and there's a word growth there. Simon's presentation probably says we shouldn't have growth, but yeah, there's a different thing. So so basically, is our plea from Stonehouse Climate Action Group, Stonehouse Town Council, and actually Stroud District Council, that we do reopen this station. So yeah, I think that's it. John, thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you, Teresa. It is a great project and well worth everybody's support. So if you are watching this, then please do take a look at the information online. And I think the link has been put in the chat. So that is brilliant. Okay, onwards and upwards. Next, we have a presentation from Mike. Mike, all yours.
Thank you, John. Good afternoon, everybody. It's nice to see so many people here. I'm also a Stonehouse Town Councillor, though that's got absolutely nothing to do with what I've been asked to talk about. A little bit of background, otherwise some of the things that I'm going to say might sound a little bit smug. We moved into Stonehouse about 6 years ago. We were trying to downsize a little bit, and that meant we had a little bit of spare cash. Made it possible to do some things to our house in fairly short order that otherwise might have taken a good few years. The house was also requiring a little bit of TLC, and that meant we were able to take advantage of doing jobs that we were going to have to do anyway, but to do them in a way that hopefully has made the building a bit more sustainable in the long term. So as far as our energy supply is concerned and trying to green our energy supply, there are two main aims. One is to make our energy supply more sustainable, and the other is to try and cut our costs. And we were hopeful that we might be able to do both things. So it's partly about where we get our energy from, because we've got to use some energy, and it's partly then about trying to stop that energy going to waste too easily afterwards. Dealing with the second one of those first, and thinking about our house really just like a box that we want to keep energy in as far as we can. And I'm probably going to say things that most of you know pretty much all about anyway. But thinking of our house as a box, and wanting to keep the energy in, we started at the top with loft insulation, and that was fairly straightforward. We've now got about 30 centimetres of loft insulation, that up there. We were lucky in that we didn't have any electrical fittings in the ceilings that needed us to take care that there was no overheating. The only thing we had to watch is that having insulated our loft properly, the loft then gets very cold, and somebody had very thoughtfully run water pipes in our loft along the ceiling, along the roof rafters at about waist height, and so we had to be a bit careful about insulating them properly as well to avoid them freezing up in the winter. That was all fairly straightforward. Working down the building and looking at the walls, that got a little bit more complicated. Again, it was in a way a fortunate accident that the doors and windows were all getting near the end of their useful life. So we've been able to replace our doors and windows, the external doors and windows, not with anything very fancy, but we went for timber framing and just double glazing, and that all seems to be working pretty well so far. The walls themselves were a bit more of an issue, and this is where things get slightly more interesting, because most of our house is single skin brick, which is about as bad as it can get. So there's no opportunity to put cavity wall insulation in or anything like that. But good news was that a lot of the brick was rendered. Bad news was that most of the rendering was in pretty dire state. But the good news again, what we've been able to do is re-render with a lime plaster, traditional plaster, so it's breathable. And it's a lime plaster which, instead of being based on aggregates like sand, is based on granulated cork. Now, the guys who put it up for us loved using this stuff, because a 25 kilogram bag of this stuff actually only weighs about 11 kilograms because of the cork. So it's really easy to handle. You can apply it in thicknesses up to about 5 or 6 centimeters, and it does provide a degree of insulation on our external walls. So that was that bit. And then working down further, and something that not many of us will have a chance to do that often, we've got old style floors with floorboards on joists, and while we were redecorating, I was able to take up the old wooden floors and insulate under the floorboards. This was tedious. Basically what it meant, I don't know if you can see this nice breathable membrane here. In fact, it's been cut up into little bits because we've been fitting it into homemade face shields. But this comes in a sort of 5 foot wide roll, and we cut bits out of this, which I then used with a staple gun to make troughs in between all our floor joists. And then in the trough, it was filled with this sort of stuff. This is cellulose from recycled newspaper. That gets loosely put into the membrane troughs, and then that meant we ended up with 20 centimeters or so of insulation under our floors. All I had to do then was nail the floorboards back on top. As I say, it was all a bit tedious. The insulation comes packed in nice, solid, compact bales, and you have to sort of, it's like making pastry. You have to go like this with it to loosen it up and make it fluffy. But it was easy to do, and we've now got floors that are draft proof and also prevent heat loss downwards that way. So that was what we managed to do to try and keep the energy into the house. As far as where the energy comes from, that's a work in progress. I was just looking at the Ethical Consumer website just yesterday, and there are now at least half a dozen energy supply companies you can go to who not only claim that the energy they supply to you is 100% renewable, but these are also companies who are putting significant investment into actually generating green energy, which is a very important aspect. So that's one thing that we did, was carefully choose our supplier. But we do have a fair amount of south-facing roof. We're lucky. So we put solar photovoltaic panels on the roof. And at the time, battery storage wasn't really an option. It's still quite an expensive option, but almost the best single thing that we've done was to buy a little switch that when, particularly during the summer, we're generating more electricity than we're using, it diverts our excess electricity as far as it can into an immersion heater in the hot water tank. So we are effectively storing our energy as hot water. The result of that is that unless we have people staying like we used to be able to, and they're sort of all showering at all hours of the day and night, from about March, April, depending on the weather, through till end of September, early October, perhaps again, depending on the weather, we don't have to use our normal boiler at all. All our hot water is produced by this immersion heater using the excess that we generate from the solar panels. Net result is that because we were able to take advantage of the feed-in tariff at the time we put our solar panels up, the net result is that, as well as we hope saving a fair amount of the energy we use, we're pretty much revenue neutral on our energy, and I think we pay out something like £100 a year total for our gas and electricity, over and above what we get back in from the electricity we generate. I mentioned gas. We are still on gas. That's why our energy input is a work in progress. We've been looking recently at the possibilities of going over to air source heat pump, but it would actually be very difficult to fit in our property. And ground source heat pump would also be a really big challenge. What I suppose we might want to look at in the future, and I can see it would be really difficult to organise, but I'm going to look into it, is the possibility of a community loop for a ground source system. If us and our neighbours at any time in the distant future could decide that between us we could share a ground loop, then that might be the best way forward. It would be hugely complex, and there are an awful lot of obstacles, but I think it'll be well worth our while investigating. That's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mike. Some inspirational ideas in there. Apologies for everybody. I'm clicking between different views and it's popping around. Sometimes we can see people, sometimes we can't. Blame me. I don't really, it's user error. It's my fault. Brilliant. Thank you, Mike. That was really, really good. Keep your questions coming in, folks. And now I'd like to hand over to Ginny.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name's Ginny. I'm representing Stonehouse Methodist Church. I've been a lifelong member at that church. I was baptised there a long time ago, married there, and still worship at that church. I've been part of the Stonehouse community all my life, except for about 10 years when I lived in London. But we came back to Gloucestershire about 30-something years ago. So one of the more recent projects that I've been involved in at the church is the Eco Church scheme. We joined this 2 years ago. I'll just go on to the next one. There we are. The actual scheme was founded in 2016 by an organisation called A. Rocha, and it's an award scheme for all church denominations in England and Wales who want to demonstrate the gospel is good news for God's earth. It's a charity working for the protection and restoration and is committed to equipping us and churches to look after the environment as an integral part of loving our neighbours and God faithfully. As I said, we registered in 2019 in February, and there's a survey to complete at the beginning, so you can gauge where you are in the 3 award levels: bronze, silver and gold. There are 5 categories in the survey, and you have to reach the required level in each before applying for the award. So the 5 categories are worship and teaching, buildings, land, community and global engagement, and lifestyle. So we initially scored quite well in some of the categories. Our building is about 60-something years old, so relatively modern. It's not an old church building. And we had in previous years done some improvements to the building with lighting, heating, and that sort of thing. So that's why we scored quite well to start with. There's just a small eco church team, about half a dozen of us, that meet every few weeks to go through the categories and plan some events and activities. One of the first things we did, say back in 2019, was a litter pick and tidying up of our garden. We have a couple of youth club groups normally, so we did bulb planting with them, and we put up some bird feeders. And we're also asked to commit to holding a Climate Sunday service each year. It's one of the worship in the worship category, one of the commitments we make. And we had that last Sunday for this year. We've also become a fair trade church. Over 20 years last year, I became a tradecraft fair trader. So I've been supporting tradecraft and the fair trade movement for 20 years at the church. So we serve fair trade tea, coffee, sugar, and many other things that we can when we're actually able to meet in the building. And for quite a few years, we contributed to the toilet twinning scheme. So we've twinned our 3 toilets and many more, including a toilet block for a school around the world. So I think we've twinned about 20 toilets altogether. And our most recent project that we're supporting is the Fair Trade Foundation's Live Fair project, which supports women coffee growers in Africa. So on our actual eco-church journey, February 2020, so a year after we signed up, we did actually reach the required level in each category, submitted the application to a Rocha for a bronze award. And it literally was the weekend we went into lockdown last year, I got an email from them confirming the award. So that was really encouraging and exciting and gave us great hope for that we were doing the right thing, and encouraged us to plan some more projects, even though we haven't been able to meet in church for many months. The team, eco-church team, has met via Zoom, and we have planned activities since then. You can probably see, if you look carefully, we have quite a large lawned area around the building, L-shaped lawned area. So, the most of the boundary is a nice beech hedge, which is lovely for nesting birds and all sorts of insects, amphibians, etc. And we decided last year to improve the actual lawned area by asking the gardener to leave a big meter strip unmowed all around the edge. And just in the few months of last summer, we had quite an exciting array of wildflowers that came up, and there were bees, butterflies, other pollinating insects, caterpillars. We had all sorts of things that we were very surprised to see just come straight in, because we'd left a little bit of the area unmowed. We met how we got involved with the Community Climate Action Forum was through John Parker at the Green Fair he mentions, that was February last year. And he came down and had a look at the grounds and our land for us, and very kindly offered to get a tree on behalf of the town council for us to plant in our garden, which we did that on the 12th of December last year. We managed, when we could still have a group of 6 meeting outside, we had 6 of us there to plant our lovely tree, and it seems to be very happily settled in its new home. It's an older tree that John, with his expertise, chose for us to be good for. It's interesting to look at with nice catkins. It'll have nice leaves on, and the bees will like it as well, apparently. And I have actually registered that planting on the Country File Plant Britain website. So that's one of the many trees that they're hoping to get registered over the coming year or two. Also this year, we try and do one activity or project each month as we go on. And in January this year, we managed to obtain a large water butt, a special offer from Severn Trent Water. So one of the criteria of the buildings category is to have rainwater collection facilities installed and used on the premises. So that worked very well for that. And we'd even found an old car wheel dumped around the back of the building, which we used. We recycled that to use as the base for the water butt to sit on. So that was handy to have that as well. And only this week, the February project has put up a bird box, which we're hoping might be used as the birds start to get interested in nesting this year. We've also got a couple of raised beds, which we hope to grow strawberries. That'll probably be a March project, or that's one thing that we've already got in hand, and then we'll work on after that. So just to give you a bit more background on the Eco Church scheme, the target when they started was to reach about 10% of churches, which is 4,500 across England and Wales in 10 years. And to date, 3,100 churches have registered for the scheme, with over 1,000 awards already being achieved. So Eco Church has become a national community, learning together and stretching across all sizes and styles of church. It has also gained the strong support of many denominations as a key tool for them to achieve their own increasingly ambitious carbon reduction goals. The scheme's first award, a bronze, was presented to St Paul's Cathedral in January 2016, and Hereford Cathedral has been the recipient of the scheme's 1,000th award. Our church is in the Gloucestershire circuit, which comprises of 41 Methodist churches, and at November last year, 17 of those had registered as an Eco Church, with 10 already achieving awards, 3 silver and 7 bronze, including us. So we've just reviewed our survey categories, and last week, when I filled it all in, it came up that we had reached the required level for a silver award, which was really exciting and made all the work that we've done, very, very rewarding, and encouraged us to keep going. So we've submitted the application, and hopefully we'll get confirmation of our silver award in the next few weeks. So apart from the things that we're doing at our church, we also would like to encourage other churches in Stonehouse. We have a very good group, churches together in Stonehouse, who meet regularly and do things together. So we're hoping that we can encourage some of the other churches in Stonehouse to register and get involved with the Eco Church scheme. So that's a very brief introduction to what we're doing. It's at the Methodist Church. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ginny. It's a really great project down there, and I think you're doing amazing work. And it was so good when we got to meet up last year, was it the year before? But to see how we could all bring it together across Stonehouse. So brilliant. Thank you. Okay, right, it's me next, which means I've got to work out how to share my screen and try not to go into some kind of weird feedback loop. Okay, well, thanks everybody. I just wanted to give you a pretty brief talk about the Stonehouse Community Arboretum and what it means and what it is and what we're all working on. But I want to do that in such a way that means I can change the slides, which isn't working. Right, okay, let's see if this is going to work. Trees! We love trees. Why do we love trees? They do loads of good stuff for us. Trees bring us benefits. We tend to divide those benefits up into social, environmental, and economic benefits. I haven't got time to go into those in any detail. I'd be happy to do so another time. But take my word for it, there's been an awful lot of research that's been done which demonstrates the importance of trees to people. And we're very blessed in Stonehouse in many ways that we've got lots of great trees, and we are sort of pulling them together, as it were, into the Stonehouse Community Arboretum. What does it mean? Well, it's not a conventional arboretum. Normally, when you think of an arboretum, you need to buy tickets. It's behind a fence or a gate. You've got to get in there. You've got to book your time slot to go and see the trees. Well, this is free for everyone. This is a true community arboretum. It's something that anyone can enjoy whenever they choose to do so. And we're trying to achieve that by making an arboretum that spans public and private land. This is something that Stonehouse Town Council is sort of starting, but we hope that many, many more people, many more stakeholders in our community are going to join us. We like this to be a source of local interest and a source of local pride as well. We want people to understand and appreciate some of the fantastic stuff they've got in Stonehouse, and to also perhaps put Stonehouse on the map a little bit as well. Who knows, maybe a tourist attraction in years to come. And we'd like trees and the community arboretum and nature as a whole really to become an educational tool, something that we can engage the younger generations in, again, to really appreciate what they've got. Because, you know, as someone who grew up in this area, you don't necessarily appreciate how beautiful and wonderful it is until you sort of leave and spend a bit of time in places that aren't quite so green and leafy. So tree care in Stonehouse is a bit of a complicated business, really, because there's multiple owners and multiple managers. If you think of public bodies, you've got Stonehouse Town Council, Stroud District Council, Gloucestershire County Council. They all own and are responsible for trees in Stonehouse. Network Rail, the same, Cotswold Canal Trust. Then you've got private landowners, the bigger ones. So, for example, Stonehouse Court Hotel or Wycliffe College. You've got trees in the churches around, as we've heard, and you've got trees in private gardens. So there's many, many owners, each of whom are responsible for trees and don't necessarily manage their trees in a sort of coherent way. And we're hoping that through the work of the Community Arboretum, we'll be able to bring that together a bit and help people with the knowledge and skills that they need to look after their trees. And a big part of that is a tree and woodland strategy. Now, this is hopefully there's going to be a draft of this available at the end of this month. I'll commit myself here live on camera. At the end of this month is when we're hoping there'll be a first draft. And I'm really hoping that later on this year, we'll have a tree and woodland strategy that we can all work to, and we can ask for other stakeholders to buy into. For our part, we've done a full tree survey of all of the trees under the control of Stonehouse Town Council. So we now know what we've got, what condition it's in, where it all is, and what work needs to be done with it. And from that, we've managed to put together a maintenance program, which we're now working through to try and bring everything into the condition it needs to be. Partly for health and safety, but also partly to make sure these trees are maximising their potential. And the trees here are outside the schools. These three fantastic London plane trees outside Stonehouse Park Infant School. And that's some of the work that's been done recently. Looks a bit brutal. I think it's rather beautiful, actually, but it's pollarding. We pollarded those London plane trees. It's a perfectly good management method for those particular trees. And the one on the left there, you can see, has also been given some cable bracing, non-invasive cable bracing, to make sure all those huge, heavy limbs can hold together. So we're now actively managing our tree stock rather than reactively managing it. And an important part of any sort of tree strategy or arboretum is tree planting, but also establishment. Tree planting is the easy bit. This is one of the main messages we try and get across at the Arboricultural Association. Anyone can stick a tree in the ground. The trick is to try and make sure it grows through and lives until maturity to deliver all of those benefits. And some of the things we're looking at for our tree planting is quality, not quantity. You're not going to hear any mass tree planting targets in Stonehouse. We're not going to promise you 1 million trees or 10 million trees or 30 million trees, because that's not really a very productive way to go in. To give you an example, in the last planting season, we put about 12 trees in the ground, and this planting season, we're doing about 15 trees. We're not going to make headlines with that. It's not sexy enough for people to pay attention to. They want 10,000 trees. Well, we're not going to do that. We are planting responsibly, and we're planting sustainably. We're planting what we can afford to plant, and we're planting what we think and what we know we can look after to take it through to maturity. As you can see, we're planting quite large trees as well in the background there on our tree planting day recently. And we're thinking in tree time. We're not thinking in political cycles. Trees live for hundreds of years if you do it right. We're not interested in chucking a load of trees in the ground ahead of the next election. There's just no point doing that at all. We're trying to think of the trees themselves and the future generations of our community who are going to benefit from them. Biosecurity is a big consideration. We don't want to be bringing in the next oak processionary moth or Dutch elm disease. We want to be sourcing our trees from responsible nurseries who know what they're doing. We're thinking of the right tree in the right place, like many people are saying these days, but we're also interested in the right aftercare. There's no point planting stuff unless it's going to be looked after properly. We're planting a diverse range of species, as you'd expect from an arboretum, and we're going to get up to quite significant numbers of interesting species quite soon. None of this native is better nonsense. Native trees are fantastic in certain situations. Absolutely brilliant, of course. In an urban environment, you cannot just restrict yourself to native trees. We need a diverse urban forest, which is going to be future-proofed against climate change, which is going to be future-proofed against pests and diseases. So diverse species. And we've got to engage the community. These are their trees. This is their urban forest, and we need them to take ownership. The community arboretum needs to be something that is done with the community, not something that's done to them, because that's also where you end up getting more vandalism and more damage happening. And we're trying to work in accordance with the principles of green equity. This is a long explanation that I haven't got time to go into, but basically we know that trees bring benefits to people, but who is actually getting those benefits? Are the benefits that trees deliver being equally distributed across society? And if they're not, then what can we do to address that? So not just investing in the wealthy areas, for example. but it's a lot more complicated than that, and I'd be happy to talk about it another day. So, goodness me, I'm gonna overrun here, but I know the chair can't interrupt me, so I feel in an incredible position of power. This is one of the things we've done. We planted this tree. It's a wedding cake tree, a Cornus controversa. It's quite an unusual one seen in an urban environment, just next to the station. And on the left there, you can see a watering tag, please water me. So it's an invitation to the general public and the community to water their trees in periods of dry weather. But what's quite fun is you can see there's a little logo of a tree on there, and we'll zoom in a bit here. And that tree that is on the logo of the watering tags is actually the tree that I've just shown you, which was the first tree to receive a watering tag. Look at that, isn't that fun? It took me ages to line that up, so I hope you all appreciate it. And as you can see, the language there is not English, that's Spanish. And these watering materials have been translated into several different languages now, 4 or 5 different languages. They're being used around the world, and all around the world, unbeknownst to the people putting them up, they're showcasing the Stonehouse Community Arboretum and one of the trees that we planted as part of that. We want to show off trees like this fantastic oak tree just up on Dove Road, one of my favorites. The group there on the right is people coming on a tree walk that we did a couple of years ago in happier times when we could all stand near each other. We want to engage the youth. On the left here is a tree planting project done last year. We managed to get about 100 students in their class bubbles, so it was all safely done, watching trees going in the ground, learning about the trees, and again, taking ownership, understanding that these are their trees and that they're involved in them. This is Stonehouse Town Council, Ray and Richard planting a tree with help from Pam in Stonehouse in Bloom, one of our community groups. This is a London plane tree. It's quite important, this one. It's a cutting from the Bishop's Plane in Ely. It's the plane tree with the first planting date known in the UK. So it's one of the oldest plane trees in the country. There was about half a dozen cuttings taken from. One's gone to Sandringham, one's gone to Kew, and of course one has gone to Stonehouse. Quite right too. These are three swamp cypresses, taxodiums, planted down in a particularly wet area of Meadow Road. And I just wanted to include a photo of the snow because we don't get to take too many of those around Stonehouse, but some beautiful trees there. Got a cedar on the left, an Atlas cedar in the school grounds, and an evergreen magnolia, a southern magnolia on the right there, which is in Old Chapel Garden. So we're planting all across the town, but we're making sure we look after them too, because we want our trees to get to these kind of dimensions. We want these trees to turn into, like this oak here, the park oak, the oldest resident of Stonehouse. This is about 410 years old, this tree. It's a magnificent specimen, delivering loads of benefits to all the people who live there. It also tells a very interesting story about the history of Stonehouse, which I don't have time to go into now, but other presentations are available, and I will plug them at the end. And this is one of my favorite trees. I've got to include a picture of it. This is the globe willow. It's a beautiful tree. It's really central in the town. And we know for a fact that this tree was planted in 1921, which means, happy birthday to you. It's 100 years this year since that tree went in the ground. And hopefully, COVID permitting, later in the year, we're going to have some sort of birthday celebrations for this tree for the Community Arboretum. So it's a really special tree. And I just wanted to finish. This isn't Stonehouse. The eagle-eyed amongst you will have noticed this is not Stonehouse. This is Shukkeien. I'm probably murdering that name, but hey, in Hiroshima. Now, this is a photo taken in 1945, just after the bomb had dropped in Hiroshima. And obviously, amongst all the horrendous things that happened around then, all of the trees were killed. And actually, that's a complete lie from what I'm going to say. Most of the trees were killed, but there was probably about a dozen or 20 trees in Hiroshima that survived the atomic blast, even though some of them were quite close to the epicenter. And this tree here is a ginkgo. It's a maidenhair tree. And this is it now. It survived, and it's really seen as a big symbol of hope in Hiroshima and across the world. And there's a wonderful organization called Green Legacy Hiroshima, and they take seeds from these survivor trees and they send them out the world around to different botanical gardens and to different arboretums. They send seeds of these survivor trees, again, as a message of hope and how trees can be such an important cultural part of our societies and be working, within and for our communities. And I'm delighted to say that we got hold of some of these seeds for the Stonehouse Community Arboretum. And this is one of our little ginkgos growing on my windowsill. And I'm going to show you in a minute. I've brought it in with me, so I'll show you live how it's doing now. But this is the kind of thing we're also trying to do in the Community Arboretum, bring together interesting stories from around the world, interesting trees, interesting stories that we can share with our community and really put Stonehouse on the map as a world leader, to be honest, in arboriculture and urban forestry. That's what we're trying to achieve. So thank you very much. I've gone over my time, but there we go. Oh, I've gone terribly over it. I'm very sorry. No refunds, no refunds. My email is there. Twitter for the Community Arboretum is there. That's the website of the Arb Association. It's a slight plug, but there's lots of information about trees on there if you're interested. And I mentioned 2 other talks that I did, the history and importance of trees in Stonehouse and why trees are better than people. They're both available on YouTube, should you like to go and learn a bit more. So thank you very much. I will now try and stop sharing my screen thus, and look, can you see that? Is that working? That is one of our Hiroshima ginkgos. We've got quite a few of these in my house at the moment, but in a few years' time, this one will be ready to go out in the Community Arboretum. And again, it's another adds to the story. Yeah. So thank you for your patience. I'm sorry I went over. Now, far more importantly than me, I would like to hand over to Kate James Hodges, and I think Jem may be involved as well, but Kate, no, Jem's saying she's not involved. Kate, over to you.
Good afternoon. I'm Kate James Hodges. I represent Archway School at Stroud District Youth Council. I'm the Environmental Project Group Principal Member and British Youth Council representative at SDYC. I've been involved with Stroud District Youth Council for over 3 years, and I also sit on Stroud Town and Five Valleys Youth Forum. To explain my roles a little more, at this year's AGM, I was voted as the principal member for the environmental project team. This means I lead the group. I sit on the SDYC leadership team, and I will chair meetings as they arise. I was also voted to represent at the British Youth Council, where I attend regional and national meetings, inputting into their manifestos, following ongoing work, and then reporting back to the Youth Council members on initiatives that we can get involved with. SDYC won the Best Youth-Led Organisation last year at British Youth Council Regional Youth Voice Star Awards, which was very exciting. Stroud District Youth Council is in its 21st year and is a very well-established youth voice project, with the active voice for young people across the district, aged 13 to 19. There are many reasons why we exist, but fundamentally it's because young people have the right to be heard on matters that concern them. The basis of all our work is the United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child. To be a part of SDYC, you need to be voted as one of the deputy members, non-voting, or a voting member for either a school in the Stroud district or one of the 9 local youth forums. Each school and local youth forum can vote 2 voting members and 2 deputies. The school councils are conducted in schools and usually run by students or teachers. The 9 local youth forums are facilitated by the SDC youth workers and are based in areas of highest youth population. These youth forum groups focus on what is going on in their local towns and parishes, setting up projects, working with local decision makers, and getting involved in their community. You may be aware of Stonehouse Action for Youth Forum. As you have probably worked out, we have representatives and represent at local, district, county, and national levels, allowing us to have a voice from our small towns and villages right the way up to the national work of the British Youth Council and all the way back down again. At Stroud District Youth Council, we have a list of key projects and issues that we vote on and develop annually. John, could you please share the key projects and issues?
Yes, I can. Hang on a minute.
This decides what our focus and project groups are and what work they will be doing. A focus group is an ongoing running group, but a project group is set up for a singular project. The groups are Anti-Bullying Project Group. This group produced a survey that over 800 young people replied to. We're currently writing a report to guide how young people in the district can be better supported through bullying issues. Health and Wellbeing Focus Group. Some of the latest work has been promoting National Condom Day, and we developed in partnership with GPs an assessment tool to help GP surgeries become more youth-friendly. In the past, we have advised on mental health websites and restructuring of school nursing. We are also currently planning the annual mental health first aid training for members. Environmental Project Group. I'll discuss this later. Local Democracy Focus Group supports votes at 16, and we ask the Adult Council to support this as well. As well as our list of key projects and issues that we work on, very often we get approached to be involved in other work by adult decision makers and local organisations who want to speak to us to help improve their services or their project work. Some examples are Gloucestershire Clinical Commissioning Group, Child Friendly Gloucestershire, and more recently, the Gloucestershire Rail Partnership. It is really hard to tell you everything that we are involved with, as we're constantly involved in many programmes across the district, creating many projects for us, some larger than others. I will focus on telling you about the projects that we have an environmental element on now. As a whole, the environmental project group has only just started, so there isn't much to feed back about. However, we have many projects and consultancies that have connections to the environment. In November, SDYC members attended the Stroud District Council's Carbon Neutral 2030 webinar. The Environmental Project Group followed this up with a feedback meeting with Rachel Brain, who is heading up CN 2030 at the District Council. We're keen to continue this work and ongoing communications with Rachel and the CN 2030 team. At the meeting, we requested continuous updates for SDYC from the team. We discussed the possibility of signs and plaques, maybe on adventure playgrounds or on benches, signs that would have information on biodiversity and general facts and statistics about the environment. We discussed why transport wasn't something the CN 2030 team could plan around, and found out it's because it's in the county's authority. Before Christmas, Youth Council and Youth Forum members started working with the Gloucestershire Community Rail Partnership. This partnership is to improve rail and public transport access, to better the well-being of residents and improve visitor access to the region. The partnership is going to do a consultation to find out what residents' barriers and needs are regarding transport. We have had 4 meetings with them to develop a youth-specific questionnaire for Gloucestershire's young people. The purpose was to try and make it more youth-friendly so young people are more likely to take part and have their voices heard. We will also inform their marketing, hoping to reach as many young people as possible to inform future services that meet our needs. If our needs are met, then hopefully more young people will have better access to transport and use it more often, which will not only help their job and education opportunities and well-being, but will also help the environment. We made sure there were questions in there about views and attitudes to the environment. On the theme of transport, the Youth Council and Stonehouse Action for Youth Forum are aware of the Stroud Water Train Station proposal. It is on our radar as a future initiative to possibly support. We have town councillors Carol Cambitz and Teresa Watt attending the SDYC meeting this coming Monday. They are coming to the SDYC meeting to inform us of this campaign. This week, SDYC was consulted by the Stroud District Council Leisure and Wellbeing Strategy team. As part of this, we talked about active travel and how improvement of our walkways and cycle routes would encourage more people to use active travel. We also talked about the canal and towpaths as a way to travel around the district. This links to 2 projects that Wootton Youth Forum are following and supporting. The projects in question are putting lighting on the OK path. This footpath is what links Wootton, KLB School, Kingswood, and the skate park together. The path was put in to keep students safe on their journeys to and from school. However, there is no lighting on the path, which puts some students off using it during the darker mornings and nights. Linked to this is also the proposal to develop a greenway route that will link Wootton, Kingswood, and Charfield. This will also allow residents to cycle and walk between the 3 towns and will be very useful if Charfield train station reopens. The project will mean that young people can move safely between the areas, access transport to the city for work and education, and it lessens the need for private vehicle use. Stonehouse Action for Youth have been involved in the work of Stonehouse Community Climate Action Forum. They attended, in their pyjamas, the consultation held in the pavilion in October 2019. They put their ideas on the consultation boards and got fully involved in planting trees. Since then, the group asked John Parker to visit the Youth Forum. Before lockdown happened, they talked about how the Youth Forum could get involved in the group's ongoing work. Following on from this, The Youth Forum also looked over the action plan and sent some of their feedback and ideas back to Stonehouse Community Climate Action Forum. The Adult Forum took these suggestions seriously and commented on them, a great example of young people being involved in their communities and adults really taking their voices seriously. The Youth Forum in Stonehouse has also learned about the ship in site. They met Marcus, Pam, and their colleague at the site last year and continued discussions from then, giving their thoughts and opinions on how the site could be developed to meet young people's needs and therefore the community as a whole. Other youth forums have been involved in local environmental projects, and the District Youth Council has always had a keen interest in environmental issues. Some of the projects and work I have mentioned above have elements of and links to the environment, even if that's not their sole purpose. This shows how environment can be thought about in many areas of community action and change. As mentioned at the beginning of this presentation, as a youth voice organisation, we have many projects and programmes running at any one time, over a multitude of issues and in a variety of settings. I hope I've managed to give you a little insight into some of what we're involved in and how we work. We do have social media accounts, and this is the best way to keep up to date with everything we're doing. It would be great if you took time to follow us. We have Facebook, please search Stroud Youth Voice, and on Instagram and Twitter, we're called Stroud District Youth Council. The youth forums are completely voluntary for young people to get involved in, and we are welcoming to new young people who might be keen to get involved. Again, you can contact us through social media or contact one of the youth workers. We are also welcoming and keen to hear from local decision makers and organisations. Please feel free to contact us if you would like more information or would like to work alongside us. Thank you for inviting us today and for listening.
Thank you very much, Kate. That was absolutely brilliant, and it was fantastic to that the Youth Council got involved in the tree planting day, as you mentioned. And as you said, it was great to go along and attend the meeting. And the ideas that were taken back to the Community Climate Action Forum were taken extremely seriously. They were all brilliant ideas, and actually many of them ideas that were already being discussed by that group. And so yeah, absolutely, it was great input, and we're really, really grateful for that. Because let's face it, it's more likely to be a problem for the youth than it is for us. So apologies for trashing the planet. Okay, that was brilliant. Well done, Kate. Thank you, everybody. We've got lots of questions in. Please feel free to keep putting your questions in. I'm hoping if I manage to click the right button, everybody should be able to see everybody now. So I can only see what I can see. How profound we are today. So I'm not sure what you can all see, but that's what I can see. We'll try and go through in some approximation of an order. Simon, I've got some questions coming for you, and the one big one that at least 3 or 4 people have asked, but I'll go with the question from Rachel. How does it work out that cycling is worse than e-cycling? That seems counterintuitive.
It does seem counterintuitive. You're absolutely right. It's not worse. It's just that e-cycles are better. Cycling, either a regular cycle or an e-cycle, is far the most environmentally friendly form of transport, and you have to remember that. The point is if that's a calculation done over sort of the lifetime of a bicycle. Obviously, the embodied energy of making an electric bike is greater than a regular bike, but in terms of an electric bike's efficiency, because you put some power into it, but it powers yourself. Electric motors are far more efficient than your legs, or my legs, should I say. And also it depends on your diet. So that figure is taken from an average diet. Now, you can have extremes of having locally grown carrots and potatoes, and that brings down the carbon emissions of your regular cycle. But if you're eating an average cheeseburger or something like that with carbon emissions from meat and perhaps air freighted onions or something, the carbon emissions are actually much higher than an electric bike. And if you were eating, say, if you're eating air freighted vegetables from overseas, like you ate, air freighted, asparagus from Peru, the emissions from cycling a regular bike a mile are probably about as much as driving a Range Rover a mile. So it's partly to do with the efficiency of your own body. But cycling is good, regular cycling, because it keeps you fit and keeps you out of hospital, and means that there are lower carbon emissions than somewhere else. But it's just showing that you don't need to be guilty riding an electric bike.
Thank you, Simon. I was one of those people who was wondering about that, so I'm very glad you explained that. Thank you very much. Okay, let's move on to question 4, Teresa. And Aaron has got a question. Aaron's saying that Cam and Dursley station was not mentioned in the Stroudwater station presentation. Aaron's wondering, is that station being used as an existing reason to not go ahead with the second Stonehouse station?
No, absolutely not. And I should have mentioned that the proposal for reopening Stonehouse, Bristol Road, Stroudwater is absolutely not to do with closing Cam and Dursley. Absolutely, Cam and Dursley would stay open, and the Bristol Road Stroudwater station would be an additional stop. So at the moment, there's plans for a station at Charfield, which Kate mentioned, and a proposal for one other, or potentially, hopefully, 2 other between Cam and Dursley and Gloucester. So if it's only one other, we would really like it to be Stroudwater, Stonehouse, Bristol Road. If it's 2 others, then that's absolutely fine. There's plenty of room for everything. So yeah, Cam and Dursley would absolutely stay. Charfield is probably going to go ahead. West of England and Bristol are heavily supporting that. So this would be in addition to Cam and Dursley. Yeah, absolutely.
Thanks, Teresa. Good question, Aaron. Okay. Ginny, Wendy's made a comment, Ginny, just saying, hopefully when we can, you'll be able to encourage other churches in Stonehouse to follow your example, which I think is absolutely right. It's a great initiative. And I was wondering how much discussion there had been already with other churches, whether it's through Churches Together or just direct contact, and have other churches shown an appetite to get involved?
No, we haven't actually pursued that at the moment. And I think if we had been meeting more regularly over the last year, we probably would have done something by now. But we actually have the chairman of the Churches Together in Stonehouse Methodist. So our plan is to ask him to raise it at one of their future meetings. And obviously we can offer any advice or help or where to start and show them what we've done willingly. So yeah, we're happy to pass on anything that we can to anyone who's interested.
Thanks very much, Ginny. That's brilliant. It really is. It's almost quite simple interventions in a way, but you've got to do them because no one else is doing them. Yeah. So I think it's a great project. Okay, where are we next? Oh, it's me next, so I've got to ask myself a question, which again is another existential problem for me. Anthony has asked, hi Anthony, thank you so much for joining us, by the way, a stalwart of the Arboricultural Association webinars. Anthony's asked whether we've investigated the possibility of using the TICL Tickle app for setting up a tree trail for the community arboretum. We are definitely interested in doing that. A large part of this project is going to be making sure that it's accessible to people in whatever format, whether that's printed copies of maps, whether it's stuff online, whether it's through the tree trails and tree walks. So yes, that will prove an important part of our project going forward. And Simon, the brains behind, not this Simon, a different Simon, the brains behind Tickle is watching, and I've been talking to Simon about this sort of thing already. So yes is the answer, Anthony. We'll be using whatever tools we can to communicate the importance of trees and the Arboretum with people. Okay, I was going to ask, I probably missed the questions in there for Kate, sorry, but I'm going to ask my question because I'm quite interested. Kate, a lot of the time people almost suggest that young people aren't that engaged and stuff. They're not that interested in stuff. And I've found when I was speaking to people in the youth forum, there was just huge interest in it. They were so engaged and asking such intelligent questions. But I was wondering how widespread is the issue? Is the interest, do you think? Do you have difficulty engaging young people to join the group and to participate, or is it quite an easy sell to them?
So there's kind of a lot to that question, really. I mean, one of the biggest things, and I know that this has been an issue for me at Youth Forum, is that a lot of people have this preconception that young people aren't interested. But actually, when I found out about Stroud District Youth Council and everything to do with it, I had no idea about any of it beforehand. And it was suddenly I knew about all these things that I never known before. And I know a lot of people that I go to school with, and a lot of friends, and a lot of people in the different youth forums that are all from completely different areas and that are completely different types of people, and they're really interested. And I think part of the reason that we don't have full engagement from young people is because school is quite hard. It takes a lot out of you, and especially at the moment where we have this kind of unknown of what's going to happen. But at the same time, we've been quite lucky because moving things online, we've had a chance to get young people involved that would have never been able to have the time to travel to a youth council meeting. Or I know I would have never signed up to as many meetings if I had to physically go to them, because it would take so much more time out of my day. And I think it's about that. It's about knowing what's happening. And all the people I've met have really inspired me. The past chair is the reason I ran for both of my roles. And I was really scared too, because I didn't know whether people would want me to do it. And actually, I found so much support from young people, and other young people are so inspired, and it's a great atmosphere. So I think young people are definitely interested.
That's brilliant. Very positive to know. Thank you very much, Kate. Okay, I reckon we'll try and run through maybe sort of one question each more. We'll try and do that. So if you've got questions, please submit them using the Q&A panel if you can, rather than the chat. Otherwise, I have to do what I'm doing now, which is try and scroll up and down and speak at the same time, which is very difficult indeed. So, Simon, back round to you again, and I'm just scrolling up to find what I'm looking for. Oh, actually, that's... Right, okay, well, actually, this is probably a question for Mike, but I'm going to ping it over to Simon anyway, because I think it's relevant, because you're on the district council as well. Alan's saying he's a house owner, has tried to improve the energy efficiency of his house, but the planners refused planning permission for almost everything he wanted to do. This was in Stroud, not Stonehouse. So how can I do anything with my house? Obviously, you can't comment on specific planning matters, I'm sure, but in general, how do people get around that sort of issue?
Well, I don't know the details. I suspect it was probably to do with being in a conservation area or being listed building. The answer is don't take no for an answer, and go back. I live in a grade 2 listed house, and in a period when I wasn't a councillor, I've retrofitted the whole of the inside of my house and got solar panels on a grade 2 listed building. So I just didn't take no for an answer and discussed it. There are things you need to do, but I'm more than happy to talk details to somebody. Windows are often the big issue with older buildings, but the best solution for that is to fit double glazed secondary units on the inside, so you end up with preserving the look of the house, and you effectively have triple glazing.
Thank you, Simon. Good tips there. I don't know, Mike, I mean, just sort of jumping ahead slightly, I think that was probably aimed at you, Mike, and actually to jump Teresa, sorry, Teresa, but it just kind of follows on. Have you got any thoughts on that, Mike, how you actually go about doing it in terms of planning? Because a similar question came in, oh yeah, we'll do that in a minute. So, Mike, how difficult was it for you in terms of planning?
Nothing that we've got direct experience of in our current house, because it didn't fall foul of any potential planning hiccups. I think there are some broader philosophical questions here about how we're going to need to change our approach to historic buildings, listed buildings. They've been subject to plenty of changes over time when they were needed in their earlier lives, and they're going to have to be subject to changes as we go forward, because otherwise they're not going to be sustainable in the long term.
Thank you, Mike. I think that's absolutely the argument we need to be making, so thank you for that. Ginny, you've got a question. This is our current winner for the furthest distance at which a question has come in, because my very good friend Paul from West Papua, hello Paul, thank you so much for joining us, my friend. Paul is saying that it's a great project that you're working on. Paul's organisation is Green Cities for Papua, and he's also working with the local church there. And Paul's asking if he can connect with you so that you can have a sort of global network. I'd follow on with the question, to what extent is this a global network, and would you be happy to chat to Paul about what they're doing?
Yes, that's absolutely brilliant. I'm very happy to connect with Paul and find out what's going on elsewhere. I don't know what the international, I say, because we're still relatively new to all this. I don't know what the international situation is. I'd have to find out and report back at a future meeting or webinar. I know it's in England and Wales, but yes, what similar schemes there are elsewhere, I'm afraid I don't know at the moment.
Well, who knows? Maybe we can inspire the international movement from Stonehouse.
Yeah, I'll ask my sister in Australia what there is out there, and we'll work backwards from Australia.
So thank you, Paul, for your question. I'm trying to look at, there's quite a few questions in now. We haven't necessarily got ones to divide up between everybody. One came to me. Oh, this is a close contender for the furthest away question from Susanna in Malaysia. Hi, Sue in Malaysia. Thank you very much for watching. How do we get hold of the seedlings from the ginkgos? Well, it's all done under very strict biosecurity controls, as you'd imagine. But I can put you in touch with the people from Green Cities Hiroshima, who are absolutely wonderful. It's such an inspirational project they're doing. I think, again, either Dagan or Jenny put it in the chat, but you can find out more there, and I'd be more than happy to send their email over to you. There's quite a few. There's similar projects. There's a wonderful story about the Oklahoma survivor tree, which was the tree that was in the front of the building when the Oklahoma bombing happened, and it was very badly damaged. It was going to be cut down because it had sort of evidence in it, essentially, without trying to put too fine a point on it. But some people there really fought to protect it, particularly a chap called Mark Bays, who's a really great guy doing great work in Oklahoma, and they saved the tree. It's now in really great condition, and again, they send seedlings of that tree to other countries which have suffered from sort of terrorist attacks and from similar things. It's a wonderful international community, sort of a hopeful community. So that's really good too. But I can send you the information is the answer. Right, I'm just going to have to start jumping around now. I'm very sorry. Mike, Sue has asked, could you say something about the switch you mentioned for transferring PV power to an immersion heater? You said that was probably the most important single intervention you make, and there's been quite a lot of interest in that now.
It's something we didn't know anything about until our tame electricians who were fitting our solar PV pointed it out to us and suggested it. It's a little box about as big as a box of chocolates. And there are various makes and models on the market now, I believe. Ours goes under the name of a Solar iBoost, so that might be something to look up. I don't know how easy it is to retrofit to an existing PV system. It may mean that you need mods to your hot water tank. And it would be more complicated if you don't have a hot water tank. If, for example, you have just a boiler that produces hot water on demand, because you obviously need a well-insulated tank to have the immersion heater working. With your cooperation, John, I'll make a list of links to all the different things that I mentioned, and then we can then make that available.
Please do, yeah, because that has been asked in the chat as well. So how we can get hold of all that stuff, that would be great. I'm not sure a box of chocolates is the best consistent unit of measurement for us to use, though, Mike. That entirely depends on how greedy you are, sure.
Otherwise, the only unit I know is about the size of Wales, and it's a lot smaller than that.
So smaller than Wales, then?
Much smaller than Wales.
Ideal. We're answering the big questions today. Okay, there's a few more questions we haven't got time to. What we will do, though, is we'll send round the chat and all the questions to our speakers. And then if anyone wants to sort of follow up with them, then they can do that sort of in the coming days and weeks. So it will all make its way over here. And you can also email me, john@trees.org.uk, if you want to follow up on anything else. I was going to ask one more. Okay, no, I'm not. I'm going to ask two more questions. because Mike's asked a question and he's a trustee at the Arb Association. So I feel like if I don't ask him, I might get in trouble. But this is quite interesting to ask maybe all of you, possibly a bit specialist, but in general maybe, what's the panel's views on car charging points on the highway? Many schemes utilise existing lamp columns and cables, but others are requiring large-scale trenching, which often goes past trees, for the new infrastructure. So it's quite a niche question, but I suppose broadly speaking, do any of you have any thoughts about electric car charging points on the highway or any experiences of them? I'm kind of half looking at Simon because I'm sure you've dealt with some of these for Stroud.
Yeah, I mean, people who've got drives, it's easiest to put it on the drive, and that is the best solution. Most cars are charged at home. I think it's still 94% of people charge their cars up from home. In towns and cities, yes, it is an issue. If it comes off a lamppost, the one advantage of switching to these diode lights of our lamppost now is that there's now enough spare power in the lighting systems, the street lighting systems, to put car chargers on it. Because previously with the old sodium lamps, there wasn't enough power. In towns and cities where you've got bigger structures, yes, there's two aspects. One is damaging trees and also blocking the pavement for people with pushchairs and wheelchairs. So it does need to be carefully located. But with electric cars having much longer ranges, 200 miles, I think we can get around that. But yes, it is a problem. And we need some suitable solutions to get around tree roots, because we need trees in towns.
Yeah, it's a real problem. I mean, I know Mike's a tree officer, and I've experienced this as working as a tree officer as well. There's some real issues around space, really, and particularly there's so much competition for space in the urban realm for all the things we've talked about. I was involved in London when the Cycle Superhighways project went in. Obviously, that's a fantastic project because more cycling, but equally it means you need to widen the roads. When you widen the roads, what happens? Trees get cut down. So it's a really difficult balance. I think probably with all the projects we've spoken about, really, it's all a balancing act. Last question I was going to ask, unless anyone else has got anything on EV cars. Sorry, I don't know. I opened that out to everyone at first. No one looking like they want to leap in. Okay.
No, just quickly, there is also, you mentioned the little switch from solar panels. There is actually I think there's a switch you can get also that means that you can have attached to your solar panel where you can switch from you charge your car up first from your solar panel, then from your battery, and only then go to the grid. So there's another little sort of box of chocolate size switch that you can put in your house.
Brilliant. Thank you, Simon. I'm going to ask you all one final question. I'm just going to whip round in the order in which people spoke. It's a question that Amy submitted, I think probably for me, but I'm going to amend it slightly. Amy's asked, how can the general public show support to Stonehouse councillors in regards to supporting the planting of trees or county council land use? And we have had a few issues with the county council and planting trees, but that's for another day. I kind of wanted to broaden that out more widely to ask all of the panel, what can members of the public who are watching this do to, I guess, put pressure on whether it's their town council, their county council, their district council, to actually take this seriously, to implement some of the changes we've been talked about? Whenever you talk to people about these things, the problems are normally resources or interest, or these are the barriers. What can people watching this right now do to encourage their local authority or district council to address some of these issues? And I'm just going to ask all of you in turn. You don't feel the need to reinvent the wheel completely, but Simon, we'll start with you.
Okay. I think it's actually more about, it's to misquote Kennedy, it's not what Stroud District Council or Town Council can do for you, it's what can you do for the planet. And if the town or district council is getting in the way, then that's the time to put pressure on, because I think the political will is to do something. It's often the capacity and odd bits of bureaucracy getting in the way. And if there's enough pressure and enough people wanting to do something, I think there'll be a way around it. It's people coming forward with ideas and saying, we want to do this, we want this to happen, I think is the important thing. And don't be put off by some official saying no the first time. Try and find a way around it. And talk to me. I'm always willing to help and lobby and make things happen.
Thanks, Simon. Teresa, have you got any thoughts on that?
Yeah, Absolutely. I think it's individual action. I mean, I think, if you have a garden, you can plant a fruit tree, Amy, which I know you've done in your back garden. Things like that. We can all do something like that. And we can all plant trees. But actually, I think we also need to think about other carbon, I can't think of the word, carbon bringing in, reducing carbon in other things. So hay meadows, for example, are good at reducing carbon. So it's not just trees, but it's other ecological ideas as well. And the council that I work for, I'm a town councillor, which is volunteer post, but I actually work for a council as well. We're trying to do a lot more hay meadows in our very big urban parks, which we're going to get so much grief from local residents because the grass is long, so they can't see the dog poo to pick it up and all the rest of it. But people just need to be taking individual action. They need to pick up the dog poo, and we need to have more hay meadows. We need to have more trees. And I think you find that all councils are probably doing that. And I think it's the pushback from individual residents who complain about it. This is messy. I can't pick up my dog poo. It is the thing that stops the councils. The councils are probably much ahead of the residents. So it's changing residents' hearts and minds as much as us doing our own individual bit, I think.
Thank you, Teresa. Mike, have you got anything to add?
Not very much. Yes, picking up from what Teresa just said, if you've got good ideas, then share them with your friends and neighbours. Actually, don't necessarily assume that all councillors are all seeing and all knowing. And if you have got a good idea, or if you've got a question or a complaint or a suggestion, don't keep it to yourself. Let us know, because it just might be something that we haven't thought of.
Absolutely. Thanks, Mike. Ginny.
Nothing specific, just to follow on from Teresa, just individual things, anything that you can do, try and do. If it doesn't work, try something else. Pass your knowledge on to other people, say, encourage them to do something. Sharing knowledge is probably the easiest way to, talking about doing things. Because I just since we've joined the forum, I've picked up all sorts of things that I sort of either didn't know or didn't know where you could find information on, and so the sharing of information is really, and just spreading the word. Yeah.
Thank you, Ginny. And Kate, have you got any thoughts on this?
Yeah. Think about all aspects of your life for CO2 reduction, lead by example, email councillors and MPs, sign petitions. And this is my main thing from a youth council: donate your time. You don't have to donate money if you don't have it. Time is super important, and it can make a massive difference.
Thank you so much, Kate. What a fantastic note to end that on. I just wanted to read out one very brief comment from the chat, which has come from Simon Edwards, and I think that it's a very nice message that I wanted to share with all of you. Simon says, "Hi all from London. I hope you all realise what an inspiration Stonehouse is. Active community involvement, tackling local problems, and tree planting with projects like the Stonehouse Community Arboretum is a model for the world." Very nice comments there, Simon. I did not pay Simon to mention the Community Arboretum there, but it is great, and it's so wonderful. Panelists, you're all doing such great work, and thank you so much for giving your time and your knowledge and expertise to share. And also all of you watching out there, it's really appreciated, because this is, as Ginny said, it's all about communication, sharing ideas. Hopefully we've managed to do a bit of that here today. So I think that's probably all for me to say, unless anyone's got anything they want to add to close off. He says, loitering. No, everyone looks happy. In that case, thank you so much to our speakers. It's brilliant. Hang on a minute. Jane has raised her hand. Jane, here we go. There's always one. Jane has raised her hand. Jane wants all of us a picture of us all, don't you, Jane? Can everybody... There's no way of you. Right, someone put in the chat, can you see all of us at the moment, or just the person speaking? Right, thank you, Dagan. So in that case, if you can see all of us, then Jane it would like speakers, panelists, do you have any objections to a photo or a screen grab being taken so that we can show what we've done later on? So try and look active and wise and that sort of thing. Jane, go for it. I don't like posing for photos at the best of times, but at least when you can see the person taking the picture, you know when they're kind of done. We could be here forever. It's just weird. Jane, we're going to stop. I feel uncomfortable. Thank you to our panelists. Thank you to our audience. You're all brilliant. Please follow up on all the work that's being done. Check out the Community Climate Action Forum Stonehouse on the website. If you wanted to come along to a future meeting, you'd be more than welcome to. Just drop me an email, john@trees.org.uk, and I'll send you the information. So enjoy the rest of your weekend. Thank you so much, and we'll hopefully see you again soon. Bye-bye.